So we're going to talk about abortion because it seems like the time to talk about it. What day is it today? 2 weeks and a half ago or so, Roe versus Wade was overturned here in the United States. So it has been certainly a topic of conversation over the past number of weeks. So I want to have a little bit of a conversation about it. And I want to take it in a direction where I haven't really heard the abortion conversation go this way, the way that I kind of want to talk about it. So I hope that this is refreshing, and I don't know why this is not the way that the conversation often goes. Maybe because it's kind of like lofty, something that seems like an ideal that couldn't be achieved, or because we're trying to go too deep into the roots. But I think it's going to the roots, which is really what needs to take place. And I also want to say this before I start, that this is a topic, a conversation that has caused a lot of hurt for people. And if you're someone who has experienced hurt around this theme, around this topic, I want to apologize. I want to say sorry that you're hurt. And whatever the case may be, in circumstances you've been involved in something that someone has said about you, or some way that you feel towards the situation. And I hope, and I think this needs to be a fundamental understanding before we have conversations around things like this, especially this topic, is that I hope that you receive anything that I say in the manner and my approach that I care about you as an individual. And that anything that I say is not attacking or trying to one-up someone or gain some kind of power or control over someone else, but that I care deeply about life, of you, about unborn children, about everyone. And that hopefully this conversation is a conversation ultimately of freedom that we can live in abundantly. And here I think is where I want to start the conversation. From an underlying understanding, assumption maybe, that people don't just love abortion for the sake of abortion. Like that, I think that's what I want to make the underlying thing here, that maybe there are people who are just, and I hope this isn't the case, because this just seems like off and maybe a little sadistic, that there are people who are just like, yes, I would go for a monthly abortion because I love it so much. The procedure, it's great. It feels so good. Like I have a sense, as again, a man who will never have to receive an abortion, or would never, that's not something that I would receive as a man. I have a sense that women don't just want abortion for the sake of abortion. The other kind of fundamental thing that I guess I want to lay out is some sense that most people, I hope, come to, is that from conception, what is growing in the womb is actual human life. And that there is some sort of value or dignity and worth to that life that's growing in the womb. And of course, I think this is kind of the starting point that I think most Christian circles have, is that argument about that's actually life, and that life has worth and dignity and value. I'm gonna make the assumption that most people have at least some like intellectual sense of like, okay, there's something alive in there. I think that the conversation mostly is more towards that like personal, circumstantial element that ties into the whole situation for a woman in the case of an unwanted pregnancy. Because this truly is the circumstance around abortion. That abortion would not be a thing if every pregnancy was a desired, planned, wanted pregnancy, right? If every life that was conceived in the womb came out of a situation where it was a desired pregnancy, planned, wanted, then we wouldn't have a conversation around abortion. It wouldn't be a thing. But abortion comes about as a response and kind of, I guess, like a health care response to unwanted pregnancies. Unplanned, undesired pregnancies are the circumstance where abortion becomes an option. And I'm adding this in now because I didn't say it well enough in the first take of this video. And it needs to be said that abortion as an option is not only a terrible option, but can never be a morally acceptable option. Because what takes place in abortion, if we do have that understanding, even just intellectually, that there is some life growing in the womb during a pregnancy, that is a human being. And that what abortion is, the end of abortion as a moral act, the object of it, is ending that life, terminating, aborting that life that's growing in the womb. Even if it is for the sake of the health of the mother or social, economic, health circumstances, whatever the case, every single time, the end, the object of the abortion, what takes place is the intentional ending of that human life. And if it's not a right, and we, I think, can understand that it shouldn't be a natural right that we have as human beings, that we have the right to end someone's life outside of the womb in whatever context, then it also shouldn't be a right, a natural human right for us, to end the life of a human being inside of the womb. Now, first thing I want to say is that the conversation in Christian circles really ought to be more and more growing into, especially now that like Roe versus Wade overturned, that the conversation needs to be moved heavily towards alternatives and options. That for a woman who has an unwanted pregnancy, abortion seems like top the list, the most straightforward path to deal with that unwanted pregnancy. What should be the conversation, and I think in some places it is, but the conversation should be about alternatives, talking about pre- and postnatal care and adoption and things of the sort. And I will say that the church is an enormous provider of pre- and postnatal care for crisis pregnancies and unwanted pregnancies. That also needs to be a part of the conversation, that there is care there from the church, from the people who are pro-life, who care about the life in the womb. I think also really do care about the mother. And I hope that that's the case. And I think that needs to be an ongoing conversation about the care for the mother and the alternatives other than abortion, pre- and postnatal care for safe crisis pregnancies. But I also want to bring the conversation to this, that I, like I said, as a man, will never be pregnant. I will never bear a child in my womb, and I will never have to deal with the circumstances that come with pregnancy, especially one that is unwanted and unplanned and comes with a lot of economic hardships, social hardships, health concerns, so many different things that I, as a man, will never have to deal with. And I can, to some extent, understand the situation where a woman has an unwanted, unplanned pregnancy and says, I shouldn't have to deal with this. And maybe to some extent, I feel I can't deal with this economically, socially, health-wise, whatever the case. So what if, and again, maybe the reason that this isn't a conversation for the most part is because it seems like too ideal, too lofty, and something that we can't accomplish. But what if the real aim here was to eradicate unwanted pregnancies, and that the real goal was to try to reduce the amount of unwanted, unplanned pregnancies? And what has to happen for that to be the case is we need to redefine and reorient our cultural view of sex. Because in the culture, society we live in, sex is cheap and easy, and it's an authentic expression of my sexual freedom. And we live in a totally hypersexualized culture. So no wonder we have an abundance of undesired pregnancies. And that being the place where I have a pregnancy that I don't want, and abortion being the option. So truly, if I as a woman don't actually want an abortion, then I don't want an undesired pregnancy, then I have to address as women, and I think especially for us as men, because this is, I think what most of this falls on us as men, to reframe our understanding of sex and to put it in its right place. To bring sex back to what it is truly made for, a gift of God, as the consummation of a marriage covenant between a man and a woman that brings forth new life. That what sex is ultimately for is the procreation and union of a marriage covenant and procreation bringing forth new life. And we've lost that. We live in a world where sex is for everyone, whoever we want, whenever we want. And that puts us in a terrible place. So what we truly need to address, really fundamentally roots, is sex. And we need to reframe our understanding of sex. And I think what a lot of that means, I think one of the big players in that is pornography. That really, if we're going to make abortion illegal, we need to make pornography illegal. We need to get rid of pornography, because what does that do to the mind? Hypersexualizes individuals, especially for men. Because men, a lot of this does fall on men. If we are to reorient how we engage with our sexuality and engage in sex appropriately, safely, in its right place in the marriage covenant, we need to actually place it there. And we need to restructure our entire world and our culture. A lot of that has to do with pornography and media and what we see and what we engage with and consume. So we get rid of pornography. That makes a big difference. And we need to begin having conversations then about what is sex, what is it for, and putting it in its right place. And the real truth about that is that the only way to do that, because the only place that we see it rightly ordered in that context in this world, is in the church. That the church proclaims sex is a gift from God. That it's rightly ordered as the consummation of a marriage covenant, procreation, and union. The church proclaims that. No one else does. Our culture, society does not say that about sex. So we need the church. And what we need is a relationship with Jesus Christ to engage with that church. So at the very roots of this whole issue, when we're talking about abortion, abortion comes about through undesired pregnancy. Undesired pregnancy, unwanted pregnancy is the context of which abortion becomes an option. So if we try to go deeper into the roots, we try to root out unwanted pregnancies. And in order to do that, we need to change our fundamental understanding of sex to put it in its right place in a marriage covenant. And we can only do that in the only place that it is spoken of like that, in the church, in a biblical understanding of sex as a gift from God. And in order to come to that place, I need to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Jesus is the answer here. Jesus will change the world in this way. Jesus will reorient our understanding with sex, the way we interact with others, not as sexual objects, but as people. Human beings that we love and don't use and abuse for sexual pleasures and purposes, which leads to abortion, which is the ending of human life. If we can restructure the way we see sex, that we respect human life in the womb and we respect women who have to deal with unwanted pregnancies. This is for everyone. This is for all of us to come to live an abundant life. And this is the conversation that we need to have, my friends. Let's begin to have renewed conversations about sex in our culture and human dignity and interacting with each other out of love and respect for the value that every one of us has from womb to tomb in human life as a child of God. Let's begin to have that conversation. I hope this makes sense. I care about you and your freedom and your life in abundance. And may we live that abundant life together in Jesus Christ.